You stand at the edge of imagination, staring into a sky that hides two worlds you were taught were neighbors, maybe even possibilities. Venus glows like a jewel. Mercury glimmers like a spark near the sun. In childhood books, they were destinations, the first stepping stones on humanity's journey outward, the places we'd hop to once we mastered the moon and built sleek white ships gliding through the stars. But as you grew, reality formed cracks in that dream. NASA posters became news headlines filled with delays, failures, lost funding, and hard lessons from physics. The solar system stopped feeling like a neighborhood and started feeling like a wilderness. And in that wilderness, two planets became ghost doors, tempting, shimmering, but never truly open. Venus, Mercury. On paper, they are close. In truth, they are locked behind laws that never bend. Yet here you sit, still asking, still wondering, why can't we go? Why did we land on the moon 60 years ago, send rovers to Mars, reach Saturn with robotic eyes, and yet these two planets remain forbidden? It's not because we lack courage or ambition. Humanity has touched fire for curiosity alone. We've sailed into oceans without maps. We've flown before understanding flight. If willpower alone could get us to Venus and Mercury, we would have built vacation domes there by now. The reason is stranger, colder, more humbling. These worlds were not built for human footsteps. Venus waits like a beautiful lie, a place that tricks you with romance. For centuries, people imagined oceans, jungles, cloud cities. They thought humankind would one day walk through steamy emerald forests beneath yellow skies. Instead, Venus hides an atmosphere so heavy it crushes metal and melts dreams. The surface is hot enough to liquefy lead. The clouds above rain acid. Even robots gasp and die in minutes there, like fish flung into open flame. Mercury is the opposite. Not seductive, not kind. It is raw creation left unfinished. A scorched rock with a heart of iron. No air, no mercy. Temperatures swing from frozen shadow to molten sunlight. Radiation chews through matter like hunger without end. Stand there for just a moment, and your body would not burn or freeze first. It would unravel. Still, the idea lingers inside you, the quiet voice. If we can dream it, shouldn't we reach it one day? You picture the Apollo astronauts' dusty boots on gray lunar soil. You picture the first humans on Mars someday, suits shining red under the thin sky. Those moments feel possible because they align with the narrative you grew up believing. Progress, expansion, humanity rising. But Venus and Mercury are reminders that the universe is not obligated to be conquered. Sometimes discovery does not lead to arrival. Sometimes knowing a world means keeping your distance. There's something poetic in that, even a little haunting. It feels like staring at a lighthouse built on jagged rocks. A place you admire, not touch. And in the quiet corners of your mind, you sense the truth. Part of you still wants to defy the impossible. Human beings aren't wired to accept no from the cosmos. Maybe that's why you're here. Not to be discouraged, not to surrender, but to understand exactly what stands between us and those burning horizons. To learn why rockets melt, why metal buckles, why time itself feels different so close to the sun. To grasp why we send machines instead of men, and why even they die fast. This is not a story about limits. It's a story about scale. It's about what it really means when nature sets rules and humanity, for once, has to listen. You are peeling back the curtain on two planets that look calm in a night sky, but exist in a permanent scream of heat, pressure, and radiation. Before you judge our species for not planting flags there, consider this simple truth. Surviving is a form of courage, too. So breathe. You are not here to rush. This is a quiet journey, a thoughtful one, the kind that catches in your chest because the universe feels bigger than you remembered. You're stepping into a story filled with science, heartbreak, wonder, and the strange beauty of worlds that reject us. And as the lights dim and the stars settle around you, the narrator in your head whispers, you are about to learn why the closest worlds are the farthest from our reach. You close your eyes and picture Venus the way early astronomers imagined it, a soft, glowing marble in the sky, wrapped in clouds that look pure and peaceful. Romantic poets once called it the morning star, the evening star, a light for lovers walking under twilight skies. Science fiction filled its surface with oceans and lush jungles. People dreamed of sailing ships through vapor seas and building glass-domed cities beneath golden skies. And here's the twist that makes your chest tighten a little. We believed that dream longer than you think. Not because we were naive, because Venus wanted to be believed. It shines brighter than any planet visible from Earth. It's almost the same size as Earth, the same mass, the same density. In the early days of space exploration, Venus felt like Earth's secret sister. So close, so beautiful, so reachable. But beauty in space often hides danger, and Venus hid hers well. The first spacecraft we sent to visit Venus, Mariner 2 in 1962, broke the charm. It didn't send back jungles, it sent back numbers. Terrifying ones. A world hotter than any furnace. No oceans, no gentle clouds, just a suffocating tomb of heat and pressure. The dream cracked and truth spilled out. Venus wasn't Earth's sister. Venus was Earth's fever dream. The surface sits at around 475 degrees. Imagine standing in a kitchen oven turned to maximum, then never being allowed out. But that's not the part that breaks you. It's the air. Thick, heavy, suffocating. Almost 100 times the pressure of Earth's atmosphere, like standing beneath a kilometer of ocean. The weight isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Your ribcage would collapse inward. Metal buckles, steel warps, circuits fry, and the clouds you once thought were beautiful, they are made of sulfuric acid. The sky would chew you before the heat even finished the job. Venus isn't a paradise. Venus is a warning. It teaches you something about assumptions, about how hope can blind even the most brilliant minds. Scientists once pictured rainforests and oceans. Instead, they found lightning crackling through poison haze. They found fractured volcanic plains and mountains wrapped in suffocating fog. They found a place where sunrise feels hopeless, not holy. And here's where the myth truly shatters. Venus didn't just turn into this monster. Most evidence suggests that billions of years ago, Venus may have had oceans and a climate warm enough for life. It could have been another Earth, until something tipped the balance. Maybe volcanoes pumped carbon dioxide into the atmosphere faster than oceans could swallow it. Maybe the sun brightened over time and heated the planet a little too much. One small shift became a steam trap. Oceans boiled, the sky thickened, heat built up. There was no escape. Venus cooked itself alive, and you feel it, don't you? That quiet ache in your chest, the emotional sting. Because Venus stopped being a story about space and became a story about fragility, about how worlds die, about how beauty can come after tragedy, not before it. You realize something else as you sit with that thought. Venus isn't a place we avoid because it's boring. We avoid it because it's heartbreak made physical. You can land on Mars and dust settles calmly around your boots. You can stroll across the moon and leave footprints that last forever. But try landing on Venus and you don't get time to breathe or reflect or feel proud. Your craft lands and then it melts, chokes, implodes, loses signal. The longest any lander has survived on Venus was 127 minutes. Imagine spending decades designing a mission, billions in budget, years in transit, and your achievement dissolves in 2 hours. You feel the weight of that loss, the absurdity, the bravery. It humbles you. That's why Venus missions always feel like tragedies told in slow motion. Space agencies still study it. They still dream of floating cloud cities high above the surface where the air pressure is gentle and the temperature mild. They build probes and heat armor and exotic electronics. They whisper, one day, maybe. Because human beings never truly accept impossible, even when molten rock says otherwise. But the truth remains steady, unmoving, almost sorrowful. We can stand on the moon. We will stand on Mars. But the surface of Venus does not accept visitors. Not now. Not for a long time. Maybe not ever. Venus sits in the sky like a memory of what could have been and a prophecy of what could happen if a world slips too far. It is the prettiest planet and the deadliest. It tells you, in its own silent furnace breath, that proximity does not equal belonging. You can look at Venus, you can dream about Venus, but you cannot touch Venus. And ironically, that makes us love it more. Because somewhere deep down, you already know that the hardest places to reach are the ones that stay with you longest. The planets that break your heart are the ones you whisper about under starlight. And Venus, in all its burning beauty, whispers right back. You shift your gaze inward now, away from Venus's suffocating glow and toward a world that does not pretend to be kind at all. Mercury does not lure you with romance. It does not hide behind clouds or whisper false promises. It stands in plain view, raw and exposed, a scorched fragment of creation that never learned softness. Where Venus lies with teeth wrapped in silk, Mercury simply bears them. There's a strange honesty in that. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, but not the hottest. Venus still holds that title. Yet somehow Mercury feels harsher, not because of temperature alone, but because of contrast. On Mercury, opposites don't balance each other, they tear each other apart. In the sunlight, the surface heats to nearly 430 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead, burn steel, fuse dreams into slag. But step into the shadow and the temperature plummets to -180 degrees Celsius. In a single step, you can move from oven to icebox, from metal distortion to oxygen crystallizing in your lungs. There's no in-between, no comfort zone. Mercury is a world without moderation, without compromise. You stand there in your mind, imagining the horizon. The sky isn't blue. It isn't red like Mars or gold like Venus. It is black, pure black, even at noon. The sun towers huge and fierce, not warm but violent. Space is visible around it, a burning god floating in darkness. On Mercury, light does not feel like light. It feels like pressure. It feels like judgment. There's no atmosphere worth speaking of, no air to breathe, no wind to carry sound. Silence becomes a living thing here, wrapping you tight, pressing against your thoughts. You can scream and the universe would not bother to answer. Even your heartbeat would feel too loud in your ears. Mercury does not kill you with drama, it kills you with indifference. Human instinct tries to find meaning in places like this. You search for signs of life, traces of water, clues that maybe something once stirred here. Instead, you find scars, endless craters, shattered plains, ancient fractures where the whole planet shrank like a drying fruit, crust cracking under pressure. Mercury feels less like a world and more like a warning label stamped at the edge of creation. A reminder that not all planets are meant to evolve. Some are meant to endure, and enduring is not always noble. Sometimes it is brutal. And here's a detail that makes your spine tingle. Mercury has a massive iron core, proportionally bigger than Earth's. The planet is like a stripped engine block, the outer layers ripped away long ago. Scientists argue whether the sun melted Mercury's crust off or if a cosmic impact blasted it into space. Either way, Mercury feels like the remnant of violence, the leftovers of a battle you did not witness but can still feel. It rotates slowly, yet its orbit races. Days stretch long enough to drive you mad, while years flicker past like a sped-up film. On Mercury, one day lasts longer than 1 year. Imagine standing there watching 2 sunrises in a single day, the sun pausing in the sky like it can't decide whether to stay or leave. Shadows stretch forever. Time loses shape. Space travel isn't only about distance. Sometimes it is about rhythm. Biology carries memory. Your heartbeat, your sleep cycle, your instincts, they are tuned to Earth. On Mercury, you wouldn't just burn or freeze. You would lose your place in time. Minutes would feel wrong. Your body would not trust itself. Even if you brought shelter, shade, air, protection from radiation, Mercury wouldn't greet you with silence. It would greet you with something worse, solar wind. Invisible particles slamming you with energy from the sun. No magnetic field strong enough to shield you. No sky to absorb the hit. A constant cosmic sandstorm with no sound, no dust, only raw radiation peeling at your existence. And yet, part of you finds Mercury fascinating. There is beauty in the stark honesty of a world that has nothing to give and still exists with quiet defiance. Mercury does not lie. It does not tempt. It does not pretend to be reachable. It simply is. You realize how different it feels from Venus. Venus toys with you. Mercury stands like a monument to extremes. It is the universe holding up a mirror and asking, are you sure exploration is always about arrival? Are you sure setting foot is the only way to know a place? Mercury teaches patience. It reminds you that not all victories are physical. Some worlds are meant to be observed, understood from afar. Curiosity does not always require conquest. Sometimes curiosity means respecting boundaries written in heat and vacuum. But here's where the story takes a twist you didn't expect. Mercury may be hostile, but it holds secrets that pull scientists like gravity pulls starlight. In the permanently shadowed craters of its poles, shielded from the sun for billions of years, there appears to be ice. Yes, ice. Frozen water in a place closer to the sun than any world except a star's corona. A contradiction. A whisper that even in the harshest environments, conditions can surprise you. It sparks a tiny ember in your chest. Hope, maybe. Wonder. The reminder that nature does not exist simply to deny you. It is complicated, chaotic, beautiful. And just when you feel that warmth, another truth returns. Ice won't save you here. Curiosity won't keep you alive. Ambition won't overcome physics. You cannot breathe here. You cannot walk here. You cannot survive the day or the night. Mercury remains unclaimed, not because we lack courage, but because courage has limits in the face of raw creation. It is a place where civilization has no meaning, where human achievement feels fragile, where every instinct you possess screams, leave. And yet your imagination stays. It lingers there on the cracked horizon, watching sunlight blaze across a world that never learned to soften. Because deep down, that is part of being human too. We are drawn to places we cannot touch. We wonder about landscapes that reject us. We study worlds not to own them, but to understand our place in the universe. Mercury exists like a final whisper from the cosmic furnace. Some frontiers are not walls to break through, but truths to learn from. You take a breath, you feel both small and awake, and you realize something simple and profound. Sometimes the most unreachable places are the ones that teach you the most about who you are. You hear people say it all the time. If Venus and Mercury are so close to Earth, why can't we just go? It sounds reasonable, logical even. Space is a map, right? Distances, destinations, travel routes. And on that map, Venus sits right next door. Mercury isn't far behind. They look like short trips, weekend getaways on the cosmic highway. But space doesn't follow the rules you learned with globes and geography books. Space doesn't care about straight lines or your sense of scale. In space, proximity does not mean accessibility. Sometimes the closest door leads to the most dangerous room. Here's where your childhood intuition breaks. Distance isn't the enemy in space. Energy is. It takes monumental energy to move from one orbit to another. Space travel is not a road trip. It's climbing out of one spinning whirlpool and trying to land inside another, each moving at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. You don't travel to Venus, you fall toward it. The trick isn't arriving, it's stopping without dying. You imagine standing on a bridge over a raging river, trying to jump from one spinning whirlpool to another without being dragged under. That's orbital mechanics. That's interplanetary travel. Mars, paradoxically, is easier, not because it's close, because its orbit and atmosphere give you somewhere to arrive, something to land with, something to slow you down. Venus and Mercury, they're like cliffs with no ledge. You can fall to them, but you cannot land there easily. Whatever you send has to fight the sun itself, and the sun does not bargain. Every kilometer you travel inward increases the pull. Every day you drift closer, the star grabs you harder. Gravity tightens its fist. Your spacecraft isn't gliding, it's being dragged. You're not navigating, you're wrestling. This is why missions to Mercury often take 6 to 7 years with multiple planet flybys. Not because Mercury is far, but because getting near the sun is like trying to lower yourself slowly into a volcano without getting sucked inside. You don't thrust forward, you brake. Constantly, relentlessly. And braking in space is expensive, fuel expensive, engineering expensive, time expensive. People assume space is empty. They forget space is a battlefield. Heat, gravity, radiation, motion, momentum. Invisible forces shape every decision. Venus, getting there is easy. Surviving arrival is not. You can reach Venus faster than Mars. That part is true, but then you meet its atmosphere, thick as lead, burning hot, pushing down with crushing force. You arrive, and the planet does not welcome you. It tests you. It squeezes metal like fruit. It melts titanium like wax. Mercury, you don't even get that courtesy. Mercury greets you with nothing at all. No air to slow you. No cushion. Just a dead vacuum and a gravity well hugging the sun. If you miss, you fall into sunlight and become a streak of atoms. There are no second chances near a star. And here is a quiet truth you might not expect. NASA tried to plan crewed missions to Venus once. Not landing, just orbiting in a spacecraft, just passing by, just looking. Even that was seen as flirting with suicide. Imagine spending months drifting inward past Mars, past Earth's orbit, feeling the sun grow larger and harsher each day. Imagine the light bleeding through your visor stronger and stronger, radiation whispering against the hull. You would feel like a moth flying too close to a candle, not because anyone forced you, but because you wanted to know. And that is the heart of humanity, isn't it? This impulse to touch the untouchable, even when it hurts. You picture ancient sailors staring at storm-torn seas, knowing full well that crossing meant danger and loss. They went anyway. Curiosity is both our brightest gift and our quiet curse. But space exploration teaches humility. It whispers, not yet. Sometimes, not ever. You feel the tension in that idea. It's uncomfortable but important. We are used to solving problems, building bridges, taming environments. But Venus and Mercury don't react to engineering like Earth does. They are not landscapes. They are states of nature, extreme, unyielding, embedded in physical law itself. And here's the part that stings a little. Even robots barely survive. Venus missions collapse. Mercury orbits crumble. Electronics fry. Heat shields fail. Solar radiation chews through circuits. Power drains under relentless sunlight. Venus kills you slowly and brutally. Mercury kills you silently and instantly. Different methods, same outcome. And yet you still want to go, don't you? There's a little voice inside you saying, we'll find a way. Because you know our species. You know we don't stop at impossible. We turn impossible into not yet. But first, you have to understand the battlefield. And right now, space is reminding you that close does not mean safe. Sometimes the hardest journey isn't the one that asks for distance. It's the one that demands respect. You take a breath. You imagine the night sky again. Venus shining like a jewel. Mercury flickering like a stubborn spark. So close, so unreachable. And the lesson settles quietly in your mind. In space, closeness is an illusion, and illusions are the first things that break when you reach for the stars. You've heard about heat before, desert heat, engine heat, the heat inside a rocket flame, but none of that prepares you for the heat that guards Venus and Mercury. Heat on Earth is an inconvenience or a challenge. Heat there is a law, a boundary, a sentence written into physics that says simply, no life here. You don't truly understand how much heat changes things until you picture what it does to metal, to wiring, to precision-engineered instruments that cost billions and took decades to design. In space, heat doesn't burn you the way a stove burns skin. It invades, it seeps in like liquid, it saturates everything. And once heat saturates, there is nowhere for it to escape. No wind, no shade, no cool soil to sink into. Just radiation pressing down second after second until molecules forget how to hold themselves together. On Venus, the surface temperature sits around 475 degrees Celsius. That's enough to melt lead, soften steel, warp titanium. But numbers are easy to shrug off, so imagine it. Imagine a metal railing drooping like wax. Imagine electronics popping like corn kernels. Imagine glass softening, bending. Heat so intense it doesn't make you sweat, it makes you cease. And heat isn't the only problem. It partners with something worse: pressure. Pressure is silent, invisible, relentless. Venus pushes down on you with almost 100 times the atmospheric pressure of Earth, like 900 meters of ocean crushing you. You can't build a suit to withstand that and still move. You can't build a craft that lands there and acts casual. The planet squeezes everything like clay between its fingers. It's poetic in a dark way. Venus looks soft and glowing from space, but it behaves like a hydraulic press with a molten core. Then there's the air, thick carbon dioxide laced with sulfuric acid, the kind of acid that doesn't splash on your skin so much as dissolve who you are. Air that cooks lungs and blinds eyes before you even have time to panic. You could wear the strongest suit ever made and it would corrode like wet paper near a fire. Heat here isn't background. Heat is the story. On Mercury, the heat feels different, less emotional, more surgical. Mercury doesn't blanket you. Mercury exposes you. The sun there isn't warm. It's ruthless, 7 times brighter than on Earth. Not sunshine. Radiation. The kind that peels electrons off atoms and breaks bonds inside bone marrow. The kind that does not ask permission. Mercury has no air to soften the blow, no sky to filter light. It is raw exposure, and the ground beneath your feet remembers every impact, every solar storm, every cosmic event. The surface is scarred like a battlefield that never healed. You picture yourself stepping onto that surface. Before your foot touches the regolith, your suit's cooling system has already failed. The visor darkens to near black, and still the light pierces through. If you turn away from the sun, you freeze. If you face the sun, you shut down in minutes. There is no angle, no orientation, no comfortable direction to stand. Mercury is not a planet that lets you find balance. And here's a truth that hits harder than expected. We can't even make machines that survive there long enough to take pride photos. Venus landers lasted minutes. Mercury landers? We haven't dared put one on the ground. Orbiting alone drains power and cooks hardware. The Messenger spacecraft orbited Mercury for only because it danced around gravity like a tightrope artist, constantly adjusting, constantly bleeding fuel. It didn't glide. It held on for dear life. You start to realize just how spoiled Earth has made you. Here, heat radiates outward, water carries warmth away, winds cool, shadows protect. The environment negotiates with you. On Venus and Mercury, there is no negotiation. There is only endurance until failure. And yet, somewhere inside you, a stubborn part feels awe instead of fear. There's beauty and power like that. Beauty in planets that don't yield, in forces that don't bend to bravery or brilliance. There is a lesson here that feels bigger than science. Not every world wants to be held. We talk about colonizing space like it's a checklist. Moon, Mars, asteroids, then the rest. But Venus and Mercury stand in that list like guardians, not hostile, just immovable. They remind you that the universe isn't here to be conquered. You get to visit only where physics allows. You get to touch only what nature permits. Heat isn't the villain here. Heat is the boundary. It's nature's way of saying some places are not for you yet. Maybe not ever. And admitting that doesn't make us weak. It makes us aware that the universe is ancient, that Earth was a rare alignment, that life, comfort, breathable air, these are miracles, not defaults. And now you understand something deeper. Venus didn't become hell because it was born evil. It became hell because chemical balance shifted, because a star brightened, because time changed a world. And Mercury? Mercury endured formation violence so intense it lost its outer layers and still orbits like a scarred iron bullet. These planets are not enemies. They are witnesses to destruction, to evolution, to physics in its purest, most unforgiving form. As you picture those worlds again, Venus glowing gold in the dusk, Mercury blazing near sunrise, you don't feel frustrated anymore. You feel humbled. You feel lucky to stand where you do, on a planet that chose not to boil, not to shatter, not to freeze. A world that let oceans exist and trees breathe, and you live long enough to wonder about other skies. Heat here on Earth warms your hands. Heat on those worlds strips existence down to atoms. And you whisper to yourself, almost without thinking, we explore not to own everything, but to learn where we belong. Venus burns to warn you. Mercury scorches to remind you. Earth breathes to hold you. And right now, that feels less like limitation and more like grace. You might think the danger in space is empty void, silence, loneliness. But near Venus and Mercury, the real danger is presence. A presence so enormous it doesn't have a voice, only rules. The sun isn't a background object here. It isn't that peaceful golden circle you grew up drawing in the corner of notebook pages. It is an engine of gravity and fire, and every move you make near it costs something. Not fear, not courage. Fuel. And fuel in space isn't flavor or comfort or convenience. It's life. It's survival. It's the difference between gliding home and falling into light that erases you without even warmth. When you move inward toward the sun, you are entering the heaviest current in existence. Gravity thickens. Time feels tighter. Each kilometer feels like swimming deeper into a whirlpool with weights strapped to your chest. Traveling to Venus or Mercury isn't about going far, like it's about breaking against a star. You didn't expect that, did you? We always picture rockets speeding up, racing outward, leaving Earth behind in a blaze of fire. But toward the sun, rockets aren't accelerating. They are fighting to slow down. You begin to understand orbital mechanics in your bones, not just your mind. Earth moves fast around the sun, and you are tied to that motion. To drop inward, you must cancel that speed. Imagine racing down a highway at full speed, and then, instead of turning or braking normally, you try to reverse direction instantly. That strain, that impossible fight against momentum, that's falling toward Mercury. We aren't being held back by distance. We are being held back by speed itself. The sun grabs everything. It pulls with hunger, not anger, just physics, pure patient gravity. And Mercury orbits inside that gravity like a moth that learned to hover too near the lantern. It takes a staggering amount of energy to go that low and not burn or break. And here's the part that hits you in a quiet, lingering way. Our machines go to the edge of a star long before we do. They take the punishment, they test the math, they die so we can learn. It sounds dramatic, but space has always demanded sacrifice, not the emotional kind, the mechanical kind, metal instead of blood, instead of flesh, robotics as armor for curiosity. Mercury landers don't exist because we haven't solved the balancing act of fuel, shielding, and trajectory. Venus landers exist only as brief prayers whispered into sulfur skies. We are not primitive. We are not incapable. We are just honest enough to know our limits right now. Even orbiting Venus or Mercury comes with a whisper of dread. You aren't circling a planet. You're threading a needle in the gravity shadow of a sun. Your spacecraft sweats heat through radiators. Electronics run like they know they are temporary. Every orbit feels tense, like a tightrope walk with fire on both sides. And yet you feel a pull too. Not just the sun's, your own. Because we chase the places that say no. We did it with mountains, with oceans, with air, with the vacuum beyond the atmosphere. There's a part of you wired to lean forward when the universe leans back. That instinct made explorers step onto unknown beaches. It made someone, somewhere, look up at the moon and think, we don't belong there yet, but we will. It made a pilot sit atop sparks and liquid oxygen just to taste orbit. That instinct is not foolish. It is faith disguised as curiosity, faith in progress, faith in learning, faith in the future version of us. Still, Venus and Mercury don't reward faith, not now. They remind you that ambition must pace itself, that bravery does not always mean going. Sometimes bravery means waiting until you're ready. Space is patient with us. The sun is not. And so you sit, imagining the invisible rope between planets, the pull of gravity like tides in the sky. You realize something simple, almost gentle. We are children in a cosmic neighborhood we barely understand. Running outside is fun, but some streets are still too busy, too fast, too bright. There's no shame in holding a parent's hand a little longer. In this story, science is the parent, time is the teacher. The sun is the street you don't cross alone. And one day, when our ships are tougher, when our engines are smarter, when our patience has built new possibilities, we might drift toward those inner worlds again, with more than fear, with more than machines. We might approach with confidence, with humility, with understanding. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. Because you already know the truth carved into our species. We do not stop at boundaries. We learn them. We respect them. Then we cross with grace. For now, Venus and Mercury are lessons, silent, burning reminders that some destinations require growing into. And growth isn't weakness. Growth is becoming capable of touching the stars without being burned by them. And when that day comes, the worlds we once feared will become the worlds we finally greet. Not as conquerors, not as intruders, but as travelers who learned how to survive the sun and still carry awe in their hearts. You picture Mercury as quiet, empty, a rock sitting in darkness near the sun like a forgotten marble rolling close to a fire. But when you imagine going there, you start to learn silence is not peaceful in space. Silence can be violent. Silence can smother you. Silence can be a force of its own. Mercury looks like the moon to a casual eye. Same colors, same pockmarks. But if the moon is a graveyard, Mercury feels like the bell that rang before the funeral. The first warning, the first stone that formed in chaos. It holds history without ever speaking. Everything about it feels like a memory the universe refuses to erase. You've been told it's just a hot rock. That's the myth. But calling Mercury just a rock is like calling a volcano just a mountain. You can say it, sure, but you'd be casually stepping toward something that could end you before you even realized you were in danger. Mercury doesn't have air. That's the part you already know. No oxygen, no wind, no breeze, no whisper. But the empty atmosphere isn't silence for peace. It's silence by force, because here silence kills. With no air, there is no sound, no ripple of noise. If your suit cracked, you wouldn't hear the hiss. Your heartbeat would stop in absolute quiet. And that quiet would swallow you whole. That's only the first danger, the softest one. The real threat waits above Mercury, not below it. No thick atmosphere, no magnetic shield like Earth. Nothing to protect you, nothing to warn you, nothing to buffer cosmic radiation or solar wind. On Mercury, space doesn't stop at the sky. Space sits right on your shoulders. Light hits you raw. Radiation hits you raw. Solar energy passes through your body like invisible needles. You are exposed. Naked in a storm you can't see or fight. Standing on Mercury is like standing on the surface of a match right before someone strikes it. The heat is waiting. The flames are patient. Daytime temperatures soar beyond 430 degrees Celsius. That's not warmth. That's metal liquefying heat. If you placed a steel wrench on the ground, it would soften like butter in a pan. Night is the coldest betrayal you can imagine. When the sun rotates away, Mercury bleeds all its heat into space. There's no air to hold warmth. The moment sunlight leaves, the surface collapses into freezing silence. The temperature drops to minus 180 degrees Celsius. That's cold enough to make steel snap like glass, hot enough to melt metal, cold enough to shatter it. Mercury is a world that breaks tools and burns hope, a world where nothing survives the cycle. Imagine your helmet fogging, your visor filling with starshine, the sun rising again. It would rise fast, too fast. Mercury rotates slowly but orbits the sun quickly, like a dancer turning in a circle too tight for comfort. Day, night, day again, heat, cold, heat again, extremes stacked on extremes. Time feels broken on Mercury. You feel out of sync with your own breath. And then comes the next twist. Mercury shakes. Not like earthquakes, but Mercury quakes. Why does a dead planet tremble? Because it is shrinking. Yes, shrinking. The surface folds and cracks as its molten core cools and pulls inward. It is a world trying to curl into itself. Every quake is like a heartbeat without blood. Every tremor a reminder that stability is only a rumor here. Even landing on Mercury is a gamble. Everything about it resists you. You need massive fuel to slow down because the sun's gravity claws at every inch of metal. Approaching Mercury is easy. Stopping there is not. You don't drift down. You fight down, like someone descending into deep water with no oxygen tank. Every meter fought for, every second heavy. People imagine Venus as the demon planet and Mercury as the harmless companion. But the truth is, Mercury is not mild. It is not gentle. It is not quiet in any comforting way. It is not a rock by a campfire. It is the coal inside the flame. Yet, despite all this, imagine standing there. The starkness, the brutal clarity, the shadow so sharp it looks like a blade on the ground. The sun so close it isn't a light in the sky anymore. It's a presence, a god staring back at you. Your visor would glow, your bones would hum from radiation, the light would feel heavy on your shoulders, you would breathe, and each breath would feel borrowed. And for a moment, you'd realize this is not a world meant to be visited. It is a reminder, a warning carved in stone. The universe doesn't hide its dangers in shadows. Sometimes it puts them in plain sight and lets curiosity do the rest. People dream of going to Mars. They fantasize about domes and cities and farming in dust. But Venus and Mercury, they stand untouched, untamed. Not because they are unknown, but because they are known too well. They make you feel small, honest, mortal. There's no planting a flag here, no summer colony, no brave pioneer speech, only a whisper in your mind. You don't belong here. And that whisper stays with you. It clings to your thoughts like dust on your boots as you imagine the ship rising again, leaving Mercury behind. Above you, the sun burns brighter than you ever wanted to see it. Behind you, the planet shrinks, still shrinking, still trembling, still holding its silence like a secret you were lucky to escape. Most worlds challenge us. Mercury does not challenge. Mercury warns and you listen, because here, silence taught you more than sound ever could. You always think of the sun as a giver, a warm light on your face, a quiet comfort in winter, the soft glow that paints ocean waves and mountain peaks at dawn. But approach Mercury and the sun stops being gentle. It stops being familiar. It becomes something primal and overpowering. It becomes the enemy you never thought you'd fear. Standing here, the sun is not a sunrise. It is not a cheerful orb over a blue sky. It is a blazing furnace, swollen and fierce, burning 5 times brighter than on Earth. It fills your visor. It fills your thoughts. You can't escape it. It doesn't warm you. It assaults you, and you feel small. NASA once described Mercury in simple scientific terms: airless world, extreme temperatures, long days. But science can be too polite sometimes, too calm, too neutral. Numbers don't tell you what it feels like to stand this close to a star. Numbers don't tell you that sunlight here is a weapon. You always imagine danger in darkness, monsters under the bed, shadows in space. But on Mercury, danger comes in daylight. It arrives at dawn, not dusk. It rises, and the world becomes a slow oven, then a furnace, then a crucible. Heat doesn't just sit on the ground. It radiates. It climbs up your suit. It presses against you like hands pushing you backward. And no atmosphere means no sky to soften anything. No scattering, no sunset colors, no clouds, just a black void above you and a burning world at your feet. It's hypnotic and horrifying at the same time. You wonder what the first human explorer would feel here. Pride, fear, regret for volunteering. There's a moment, if you imagine yourself here long enough, when instinct kicks in. You want shade. You want cloud cover. You want the breeze that cools your skin and settles your nerves. But the only shade is your shadow. And your shadow is sharp like a cut in the world. Thin. Fragile. Not enough. You think of sunscreen and laugh at the absurdity. The radiation here doesn't burn your skin. It reaches into your cells. It rewrites you. Here, sunlight feels like teeth. Your visor darkens automatically. Protective filters hum. Cooling systems struggle. You feel the sweat run along your spine, even though there is no real moisture in your suit. You imagine fabric smoldering, metal bending, and then out of habit you look for clouds, for birds, for anything alive. There is nothing. Mercury has never hosted life, not a plant, not a microbe. Life needs protection, life needs time. Mercury gives neither. Planets, in a way, have personalities. You can feel Earth's generosity. You can feel Mars as a lonely challenge. You can feel Jupiter as a storming giant that keeps its distance. But Mercury? Mercury feels like a test, a trial without reward, a riddle without an answer. Somewhere deep in your mind, you remember someone saying humans can survive anything, that we adapt, that we conquer harshness. But here you understand a quieter truth. Not all places are meant for us. That isn't defeat, it's humility. And humility in space is survival. Mercury is not a frontier waiting for brave explorers. It is the edge of a cliff. It reminds you that ambition without wisdom becomes ruin. It reminds you that not every destination deserves footprints. If you built a base here, it would melt, then freeze, then collapse. Solar panels would burn out. Electronics would glitch and die in radiation. Metals would warp. Cooling systems would fail. Every victory here would be temporary. Every success would expire under the sun's unblinking stare. And you would ask yourself, why did we come? To prove we could? Space doesn't care about ego, Mercury least of all. Venus crushes arrogance with force. Mercury burns it quietly, and still you keep looking, because humans look even when they shouldn't. Curiosity is stubborn. Curiosity is a flame that even Mercury can't snuff out. But here you learn something vital. Exploration is not always about arrival. Sometimes it is about understanding where not to go. You think back to childhood, to staring at the sun through a classroom window and being told not to look too long. You remember squinting, then looking away. On Mercury, you can't look away. The whole world is glare. Brightness sits in your chest. It beats with your heart. You blink, and it's still there, like a memory that refuses to fade. And somewhere in that brightness, you feel gratitude. Gratitude for the distance Earth keeps. Gratitude for the thin blue layer of air that shields us every moment. Gratitude for clouds and rain and twilight. Gratitude for shadows that cool and nights that soothe. You don't think of Earth as ordinary anymore. You think of it as miraculous. Mercury doesn't let you dream. It makes you remember. It makes you appreciate. It teaches by burning, by freezing, by overwhelming. It teaches without speaking, and you listen. Leaving Mercury in your mind feels like stepping back from the edge of a scorching cliff. You retreat, not in shame, but in wisdom. You breathe in that imaginary air-conditioned spaceship cabin and feel life return to you. You whisper to yourself, almost instinctively, we do not belong that close to the sun. And the universe, in its quiet, ancient way, agrees. You look at Venus the way ancient stargazers once did. Soft light, gentle shine, a delicate pearl in the dark, the evening star, the morning star, named for a goddess, wrapped in a glow that feels romantic and peaceful. But the truth slips in quietly, almost mocking you. Pretty things can be dangerous. Gentle light can hide violent secrets. Venus pretends to be inviting, but it is the most hostile place you will ever imagine. If Mercury feels like standing beside a bonfire, Venus feels like being sealed inside a boiling pressure cooker, chained to the floor and left to dissolve. You see that gentle white cloud layer and you expect peace. Clouds mean rain. They mean sky. They mean softness. But Venus doesn't rain water. Venus rains acid, sulfuric acid, the kind that eats through bone. And that's not the worst part. The acid does not even reach the ground. It evaporates before landing. Here, even destruction gets destroyed on the way down. You don't walk on Venus. You endure Venus. If you could stand there, the first thing you'd feel is weight. Not emotional weight, physical weight. The weight of an atmosphere 90 times thicker than Earth's. Imagine holding a car on your back. Imagine trying to breathe with a mountain pressing over every inch of you. Your suit would not just creak. It would bend, it would sag inward, then it would crush. No dramatic explosion, no Hollywood sparks, just collapse. Quiet, brutal, final. On Venus, silence is not peaceful, it's suffocating. It's suffocating. And the temperature? You learn numbers in school, but numbers never told you what they meant. You hear 475 degrees Celsius and you nod like it's trivia. But here, that number becomes a sensation. It's hotter than every oven you have ever touched, hot enough to melt lead, hot enough to cook steel, hot enough that if you placed a block of metal on the ground, it would soften like chocolate left in the sun. You want to imagine building a base here, but the steel frame would bend, the electronics would fry, solar panels would burn out, cooling systems would scream and die. A habitat wouldn't last an afternoon, hope wouldn't last a minute. And still the planet keeps pretending. From orbit, the clouds look smooth, creamy, calm. They hide the chaos beneath like curtains drawn over a burning room. You don't see the lightning storms flickering. You don't see the superheated atmosphere swirling like boiling soup. You don't see the winds up high ripping faster than hurricanes. Venus is a storm disguised as serenity. Even the wind plays tricks. On the surface, it barely moves. It feels quiet, but the gas is so thick that even a slow breeze hits like a wave of heated wet cement. Thick air, blinding haze, no horizon, no clear sky, no sun, only a glowing blur above you. Day feels like dusk trapped inside a furnace. Night feels the same because heat never leaves. Venus doesn't cool. Venus never cools. And you think back to Earth. You think of dew, of fog, of clouds with sunlight behind them. Venus looks like that from far away. But here, fog is poison. Mist is acid. Air is punishment. People like to imagine hell as fire and screaming. But real hell doesn't scream. Real hell smothers. It squeezes your lungs, it melts your bones, it hides behind beauty, it lies with a soft glow. And then you remember the myth. Venus, the goddess of love. But the planet is not love. It is obsession. It is fixation. It is desire that smolders until it burns everything alive. It is a reminder that power does not need cruelty to kill. It only needs patience. You picture a spacecraft descending. Instruments shaking, heat shields glowing, systems fighting. The craft touches ground like the old Venera landers once did. They lasted minutes. Then they melted, then they failed. Then Venus swallowed them. You don't conquer Venus. You survive it long enough to say you touched it, then you leave before it erases you. Someone once said if Venus had slightly less carbon dioxide, it might have been another Earth, another paradise. Rivers, oceans, blue skies, wind that whispers instead of crushes, life, maybe forests, maybe cities. But it didn't happen. Venus chose another path, a runaway greenhouse world, a warning in orbit, a lesson disguised as a luminous jewel. And you think about Earth again. You think about shade, rain on your hands, grass bending under your steps, wind that feels like a blessing, not a warning. You think of home, and for a moment you feel lucky in a way you never did before. People dream of traveling everywhere, of claiming every world. But Venus stops you. Venus looks at you with that soft glow and says, in the calmest voice possible, not here, not you, not ever. And the strange thing is, there's beauty in that. Not all beauty is meant to be touched. Some worlds exist to be admired at a distance, not possessed, not tamed, just witnessed. Venus isn't an enemy, it isn't evil, it isn't cruel, it simply is. Nature turned all the way up. Chemistry without mercy, physics without softness, a furnace wrapped in silk. And standing here in imagination alone, you learn something rare. Exploration is not only about going everywhere. Sometimes it's about knowing where not to go. Sometimes it's about understanding limits and still feeling awe. You look one last time at that glowing sky, hazy, golden, heavy, a world caught in its own fever, breathing fire in slow motion. Then you leave because you must, because staying here is a sentence, not an adventure. And as you drift back toward safety, toward cool air and blue light and the gentle shelter of a world made for you, you whisper the only truth that matters. Some stars are meant to shine at a distance. Earth is not weak. Earth is precious, and Venus, Venus is a reminder to cherish what we already have before we go looking for worlds we were never meant to claim.